Hello. We have been discussing various aspects of water. As I've often said, water is not about water at all, but it is about water management. For this is one precious liquid that you can't manufacture, that you can't do anything about, but just extract from existing natural resources, either at the groundwater level or from those far and distant rivers. One of the basic fundamental principles that we lead in these ZED homes that we create is that we will cut ourselves off from the organized water supply agency in the city. The idea was to say to ourselves that we will not depend on any formal grid for water supply from the outside. This meant that we had to look at how we will either look at deeper borewells or look at other possibilities for drawing water. Well, the next rule that we set to ourselves is that we can't have deep borewells because it effectively erodes the groundwater retention ability or the groundwater resource of the microregion where we are creating a residential enclave. So what did it leave you with? No water supply board from the outside, no sewerage board connections therefore with the external grid, and no deep borewells. And we have to of course ensure that we supply water for the houses that we build, called ZED homes. The systems that we have crafted over the last 15 years essentially look at the land as a watershed. We understand first, even before we start building, the subterraneous contours of the land and whether it is part of a recharge, whether it is part of the recharge aspects of a watershed or whether it is on the discharge side of a watershed. We then decide to see how we will have open wells like your grandfather's home had. Essentially the open wells will be at no more than 50 feet at the max, and they are about 2 meters in dia, sometimes 1 meter in dia. They are like ring wells which are easy to create. They are created in parts of the land which are of course part of the setback for an apartment or in the open areas if you are building a villa project. What then happens is that for every open well that you have from which you want to draw, we have about 4 or 5 recharge wells which are of course smaller in nature in terms of dia as well as depth. These recharge wells ensure that by gravity they replenish the resources in the drawal well that we identify right through the apartment block or the residential enclave. In doing so, we have ensured that we protect the deeper aquifer and that we work only at the shallow aquifer. This also means that the water in that open well or the set of recharge wells have to be constantly recharged with rainwater that falls on the land. And that is where our rainwater harvest systems make a great deal of sense. When you do such supply side management, you have to basically ask yourself whether you want to do central systems, which is to do with the entire set of 100 or 200 apartments that you have as part of the project, or you have to decide whether you want federal systems, where you decide each block of, let us say, 40 houses can be addressed in a way that it is modular and independent of the other blocks. There is a third system, of course, which is completely local, where you have one house having one open well, like your grandfather's house did. But that's not a luxury that is often had in cities today, where there is a premium on land and the quantum of land that is available for you to work on is not so much as your grandfather had. So that leaves you with the other situation of how you will master plan and do zonation of the entire land before you even get down to architecture, in a way that you will let as many parts of the land breathe with no hard surfaces, which means your roads have to be not tarmacked or asphalted, but is managed in a way that you have got clay blocks as surfaces or whatever else as surface which will ensure that the water is percolating down. Your stormwater drains have to ensure that they have percolation pits which sees to it that the water is getting down in a way that they also help this series of open wells that you have created on the campus. Supply side water management is not easy. They need constant monitoring for the first 2 or 3 years until the land's strength to retain water, groundwater, is strengthened. A combination of this, apart from the fact that you have done some very smart demand side management, which has dropped your freshwater demand from a conventional building to this kind of a green building, to a point where you have no more than 30% of the conventional building's freshwater demand, will make for the kind of sustainable water management availability that you need for the very long term. We will address some other aspects as we go along.